step away.
Our presentation is on Orientalism and Edward Said by Taters, J Money, Eminem, and I'm Doug Pacino, and together we are the Stereo Stoppers. So our thesis is Orientalism contributed by Edward Said is the way that the West perceives of and interprets the East. And also today we're going to be talking about Orientalism, Edward Said. We're also going to be talking a little bit about terrorism as well as some surprising facts.
Now, ever since 1970, terrorist attacks have been pretty much non-existent in the U.S. The only terrorist attacks that have taken place in the U.S. since 1970 have been domestic, meaning they were not Muslim or any other culture coming to do harm to the U.S. The U.S. has had a drastically lower number of terrorist attacks than other regions. Other regions suffer from major amounts of terrorist infringement and attacks on themselves. And since since the U.S. is a little more secure, it takes a little bit more to get into the U.S. and affect us.
So Edward Said was born in Jerusalem in 1935, and he was really the voice of the Palestinians. He really wanted to change. He was tired of people viewing the East as dangerous, uncivilized, barbaric, and stuff like that. And he wanted to stop the way that the West mistakenly identified the East. And in 1978, he wrote Orientalism that I was going to talk about.
Why do we have a preconceived notion of how other cultures act? This is a question that Edward Said mainly addressed in his life and his Orientalism. He was a professor at Columbia University of English and Comparative Literature. He has wrote more than 20 books, so he was a very prolific writer. And one of those books is Orientalism, which we have a picture of the title page right there. And it was a very popular, insightful book. It has been translated into about 26 languages.
All right, so now we're going to dive in and take a closer look at Orientalism. This is about how Orientalism started and sort of developed as we know it now. So the first chapter, the scope of Orientalism, explains the science of Orientalism and how it began. The Europeans referred to the Orientals, or people of the East, as non-human and non-civilized. The Europeans felt that it was their obligation to civilize these people to achieve their goal. So they colonized them, and that's how some of the generalizations started. So the second chapter, Orientalist structures and reconstructures. Poets and writers romanticized over Orientals and their land and their behavior. So they felt it was necessary to spend time there while they were writing. It was perceived as a place of pure human culture with no violence when they were visiting this place, which in turn, because of their purity, the Orientals were then characterized as inferior to the Europeans. So the Europeans felt that the Orientals were too naive to deal with the cruel world, and that was another reason that they colonized them. So the third chapter, Orientalism Now. A lot of the changes occurred during the 20th century and just before the 20th century. The Europeans started living with the Orientals not because of the appreciation of their culture, but to learn more about their culture. Shortly after World War I, Orientalism took a more liberal turn, and there were constant attacks on Islam, which made it seem like a very weak region. And then after World War II, Orientalism came to the United States, and all the stereotypes we know now as like the Arabs are violent and Muslims are terrorists started then, and that's how we know it now.
Now, over the years, we've developed the idea that Muslim they are pretty much a terrorist civilization. And when we see terrorist civilization, that means that we think that terrorists are going to come over to the U.S. and bomb our towers and destroy what we have. And pretty much a lot of America is really afraid of what Muslims can do to us. And a lot of this is because of something like the 9/11 attack and the Boston bombing, and why and how these actions against us have really struck fear into the hearts of all Americans.